And also with the consideration that we have randomized swords that may impact whether or not our runners decide to open with the Sanctuary or with the standard escape sequence, you can go straight to the Uncle and try to see if there is some kind of weapon along the path, but there will not be necessarily a guaranteed weapon.
Yeah, and we have started both of them heading straight to Sanctuary. A very quick map check on Kermit's side, but it looks like all three were crystals. And I believe Eastern was red.
Alright, well, P-Train's going to take a look and see what's at Lumberjack Cave. BBB Kermit's going to make sure that all of the Houlihan rubies are picked up here immediately, trying to get all of the progression that we possibly can in one go. This is a pretty standard opener for a lot of folks, seeing that it's pretty accessible in a lot of situations. And it does dump us back out at Link's house, so we can save a save and quit.
We had a Lumberjack Cave chat. I have no idea what was on that ledge.
Perhaps some of our eagle-eyed viewers were able to catch that. Runners are notorious for being very quick about that. In the forest, nothing of excitement to you yet, a piece of heart, but every little bit of health will count in Randomizer.
P-Train letting us know what he thinks of the Schoolwood's Thieves' Town treasure, not even opting to pick up the single green rupee.
And the Uncle today is going to give us some bombs, which, if we really were ambitious, we could go through the escape sequence if we maybe got lucky with a couple more drops.
Also allows a much easier time to try to do a Kakariko routing because you won't have to go all the way down by bombs and then go all the way back through the well and Blond's hut.
Yeah, so the ability to save 50 rupees just to find everything on your one pass through, certainly appealing, and BBB Kermit putting that on display. Having to do a little bit of overworld Mario style to get around that fire bar, but manages to dodge it effectively. So it looks like the information our runners have picked up have kind of led them to explore a few overworld locations, doubling back on spots now that they've picked up bombs, now they have, the knowledge of where a few things are. I'm kind of curious as to where they're going to head to first. A lot of the things that prevent us from doing dungeons traditionally, like kill rooms that require the bow, become a lot less of a problem in Randomizer, seeing as we don't need that anymore. You never have a item-locked enemy in a kill room.
Correct. Peter getting really lucky with the kill there, getting an 8 bomb drop.
Ooh, but the race game is going to give us a fire rod today, and that's an amazing weapon to start with early on in Randomizer. Magic management will be pretty important going forward. Bear with us for just a moment, folks. I'm just trying to sort out a couple things with the audio. Well, it looks like P-Train did manage to pick up that fire rod, and we're heading to the bottom of Blind's hut here in BBB Kermit's side. Gotta find our first lift upgrade as well. On top of that, a sword. Lots of weapons here in the early overworld. This is really helping out with what could be a much more difficult open for an Randomizer seed.
Very true. Library only giving us 10 arrows.
And in the back of the tavern, not the Sanctuary Heart, but a heart container. Very welcome to us nonetheless.
And we have our other lift upgrade and the silver arrows in the well.
That's pretty exciting, even without the bow. The rest of the game becomes a lot more comfortable once you're actually able to do that. And we get actually a nice investment from the bottle vendor, giving us 3 times what we put in, 300 rupee return. And an ambush in the chicken shack. Having a bad day on PvP Kermit's side, unfortunately. Did not expect 3 red guards and a blue guard instead of cougars.
Ooh. Who knows what danger is hiding back there in the chicken hut?
You know, it's a valid question. How are you going to deal with those guards? Not having the fire rod in that moment, probably regrettable routing later on. That being said, though, BBB Kermit will scope out the Lake Hylia Island and pick up some bombs while I'm over here. This is a popular route on the way to Eastern Palace. Of course, that item on the island is only 50 rupees.
We will have to find flippers at some point, so it's not like they'll be going flipperless this whole seed with this being all dungeons, because flippers are required for logical access to Ice Palace and required to complete Swamp.
Yeah, so no holds barred as far as the progression goes. P-Train, unfortunately, finding a train of red guards, but with that sword, actually, we'll be able to fight them off.
Very
well,
well
that went a lot better.
The chicken has guards hiding their greatest treasure.
You know, the 20 bucks, if it puts him a little bit closer to Zora, maybe it's worth it. But, I mean, just the Pyrrhic victory, being able to destroy all of them in place of the Cuckoos, which we can never kill. You know, I gotta say, all in all, not that crazy of an overworld so far.
No, it's been very nice to them so far.
For half a second there, I was like, are there enemies? These, of course, are the Babusu, which you find in Ice Palace.
Thank you, I was just going to look that up.
Things are definitely looking up for our runners now, though, with more money and a bottle with a red potion. That red potion could really come in handy now that they can actually restore enough hearts for it to be worth it.
And 2 full heart containers. Already a very healthy seed for them. We haven't even made it into a dungeon yet.
So, I mean, there's a certain amount of Eastern Palace in the dark that isn't that bad with the fire rod. We can do the back half a little bit more comfortably. Won't be able to tell what enemies are in there, so aiming for that torch might be kind of strange. But, I mean, that's one option. There's quite a lot of items you can get over there.
Indeed, and we have the back of Sarasahala's hut on the way as well.
Ice Rod Cave, way out here in the east of Hyrule, though, is just going to provide us some bombs, and there's no real water walk incentive without the boots. Definitely don't want to do a fake flipper from this far away, so both of our runners will be saving and quitting, and diverging. Okay, so we have a lift upgrade. Looks like BBB Kermit wants the back of Escape, but P-Train heading towards the desert area?
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I had a black screen on my end.
Well, we didn't miss a whole lot. BBB Kerman not getting really anything in the back of Escape. P-Train, however, going to check the dam area and then potentially head west. We'll have a couple of locations that can be handled at the same time. With that fire source and Titan's mitts, if we don't need boots for Desert Palace, we would just be a book away from being able to do it. So it'd be a long shot here, but I mean, it could be over here.
It could be. Was that a fish stuck in the rock on P-Train's side?
I mean, I've seen stranger things in the desert area. Nothing quite that unusual yet, but... Oh, there we go. Oh, but that hook shot on Desert Ledge, though, that's great information. I gotta ask, Bipo, isn't it a little weird to find a real Sandman in the desert?
Yeah, it is. At least we didn't see any pin gators, because then I'd be wondering how they're alive.
Oh no. BBB Kermit's gonna take a death in the race game through an overzealous Red Guard. Possibly Usain Bolt for those NMG fans out there, if you remember that. P-Train is gonna find the cape in Agina's cave, which may make Aghanim a consideration once we find that lamp. However, I think it would be foolish to go there before going to Eastern Palace. P-Train seems to be on that hunt right now. BBB Kermit's definitely not going to pass up that fire rod.
Green Pendant Mire. Flute in the third bottle in the back of Sarasahala's hut.
Yeah, not only that, but we also managed to get a green potion, which is really nice for having a fire rod right now. Level 1 sword is okay, but, you know, fire rod does a lot of damage, and instant one-hit KOs a whole ton of them as well, so it's going to be really useful, particularly in Randomizer, where you have more scenarios where you might need that.
Indeed. BB Kermit just not having good luck with the garden and the bushes.
Well, we didn't get a chance to see this before. The sick kid today is going to just have a little bit of love for us.
Alright, using that fire rod, getting lucky, getting a magic drop out of it, makes the guards in the chicken hut so much quicker. Ooh, and the moon pearl in Eastern Palace.
Well, Moon Pearl's an excellent find. We don't really have a way to get to the Dark World just yet, but that does inform our decisions that we might make about, you know, which items are likely to be where, knowing that we will be able to get to the, or will be able to access things in the Dark World. We're not forced to find the Moon Pearl in one location. So that possibility being stricken out, that may inform whether or not Aghanim even makes sense.
I mean, they've got Titan's mitts. They do have access to the Kakariko rock.
Oh, that's right, the rock. Yeah, so I mean, being able to do Village of Outcasts at this point, Aghanim would be really our best route if we couldn't find the hammer to get to Northeast Dark World. We don't have the flippers yet.
Of course, this being all dungeons, we have to do Aghanim anyways.
Yep, so we don't have to worry too much about it for now, at least for progression, unless we need to get to Northeast Dark World without the hammer. Um, but, when we choose to do that, it could be at the end of the race, it could be early on. Just depends on how these runners read the logic.
P-Train doing some wonderful darkroom navigation using the sword sparkle.
Well, B-Train's going to continue progressing through Eastern Palace. Of course, with that big key, we still have the big chest, and we'll have a decision to make about going towards the back. With the sword and fire rod, we have a lot of weapons we can use. Oh, you already grabbed the big chest. But we'll have a lot of weapons we can use in this scenario. It'd be interesting to see if P-Train runs into something we can't kill.
Wow, this darkroom.
Fortunately for P-Train, those are green mimics, which you can destroy with the sword. You do not have to have the bow, and they don't even have the key in the first place, so kind of working out for him, but that Lionel really giving him a mean look.
Haven't seen too much danger so far. These two players getting pretty lucky in the combination of enemies.
Yeah, I'd certainly say so. Very friendly Eastern Palace, feeling a little bit more like its original difficulty challenge overall. P-Train's wrapping up the second to last kill room before the boss, and we're about to find out in a moment what exactly are we going to need. I'm not liking the omen that P-Train has here with 666 rupees. Perhaps not a good sign. To answer the question in chat, you can never have an item blocked enemy in a kill room. That's part of the Randomizer settings as of now.
Land Molus in Eastern Palace. P-Train unfortunately not having quite enough magic for Fire Rod, although he does have a green potion, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. Even then, not a terrible fight with Fighter Sword. P-Train seems to be willing to trade the time to save that magic potion.
Decides to go ahead and use the potion anyways, as Kermit unlocks the flute.
Yep, our favorite bird friend who will carry us to and fro. That bird guy is off now, but we can call him again. We can go to one of 8 locations, and that actually does get us up to the mountain without the lamp. So BBB Kermit's heading right there. Now, in Randomizer, the old man cave, kind of a scarier place. You never really know what's in there with you if you don't have that lamp.
I saw something in fire down there. Not quite sure what that could have been.
Or Kermit a braver frog than me?
In, as Dimensive saying, we do hear a mess in there somewhere.
And despite all of the random things in that cave, we do find the old man and bring him back for an explosive reward. Not exactly worth, but the information, definitely not going to have to worry about checking that later. Of course, anything there wouldn't have been in logic anyway yet.
Very true. Well, going up, we'll get to see what's on top of Spectacle Rock, what's inside Spectacle Rock, possibly see if we get to see the hint.
And checking the hint seemed likely, but Kermit actually going to just check the item. 10 arrows, so likely going to skip that hint. And P-Train also calling upon his bird friend, his feathered companion. The Kermit's using his to head over towards Agina's cave, gonna get that cape. We'll see in a moment if that influences Kermit's next decision. The nice thing about Cape, too, is that it can help on bosses in really inconvenient positions. Cold Stare in the Mothula room, you know, Mothula in, I don't know, anywhere besides... Well, no, Mothula's not bad outside of Mothula's room.
Skullwards is positively the worst place you can hurt any boss.
Except I think probably Cold Stare. Cold Stare is like either great or bad depending on your equip. Because, I mean, like, those walls can help you out, but you can also just get absolutely wrecked if you're forced to do it with low equip.
That's true.
But it may be quite a bit before we get to see that. Both of our runners seem intent to clear through everything, except P-Train might be heading there now. He does have that Fire Rod. So with the Fire Rod, we can access the back of the dungeon, and we have a sword to open up the curtain. This does put the boss room for Mothula in logic.
So we got a very quick map check there. We have Red Pendant Ice Palace, and our other regular pendants are going to be Skullwoods, Turtle Rock, and Cod, which means our two other pendants are going to be Swamp and Thieves Town.
Well, P-Train probably not having a very good time here with this fire bar. It's kind of hard to pull this statue, and you have to pull the statue in order to get into that position. Cane of Samaria would be a very welcome item right now. Still done very well.
Bit of a pain in that room, but that room's also a lot nicer than it normally is.
Yeah, not having those Gibdos is definitely a difference. Well, it took a little bit of a health dip to get there, but BBB Kermit does find that Moon Pearl. Pauses for a moment, possibly thinking over his next option. You know, Spy Poet, who needs a mirror when you have a Hand of God? The Floor Master deciding to scoop P-Train up and bring him back to the last entrance he came into the dungeon from. Another weird quirk of Randomizer, some of these rooms are a little bit broken from the original mechanics, as certain things aren't appearing where they should. The maze there being a little bit easier to deal with for P-Train.
P-Train nearly getting knocked into another Floor Master.
This time opting for the Shove the Mortal Coil route, and going to take a stab at the back half with fresh health. Meanwhile, BBB Kermit also doing Dark Rooms, going to make his loop of Eastern Palace. Just gotta poke our way through the dark. It's definitely enhanced by having that sword. The sword gives you a visual reference on screen, and if you know how the screen scrolls, you can position pretty easily. Wow, P-Train over here just juking left and right all of these guards. These are actually pretty challenging enemies to deal with a fighter's sword. And having to be very careful to avoid yet another Floor Master. Will squeeze through, but is low on health.
Ooh, taking a unfortunate death.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. You know, you're really low on health. You do have a health potion, but you don't necessarily want to use it before the boss. But the other rough part about this is P-Train has very little magic to work with, and there's only a couple of magic refills you can rely on. Could get to back to about 3/4 of his magic meter max.
Kermit turning in his magic mushroom now. I don't know if we saw P-Train doing that earlier.
No, he did not. But Kermit's going to wisely pick up a blue potion while at the potion shop. Could also check the Zora area, but without flippers, not really a return trip you want to make.
Very true.
Wow, P-Train is really getting bullied by these guards. Thankfully decides this time around to kill them all and actually gets a really nice fairy drop. Would actually be worth relighting this torch in my opinion.
And he is going to hang around just for that torch, juking the wall master on his way.
Unfortunately, despite actually hitting the floor master with the fire rod, still ends up having it hang in the sky, and we'll have to hit the torch a second time. But with the key, this time around, we'll make it to the boss fight. With any luck, this will be something that you can kill without using that fire rod. Gotta love that clutch magic drop, and unfortunately, we do not have the hook shot for this. That's actually a really brutal room to have Argus.
Yeah, it is. Having to hookshot the puffs, kill them, and move around while dealing with that,
With the conveyor belt floor, absolutely. And you gotta consider also the sword upgrade that we have. Only having level 1 sword, if we had a better weapon like, say, a hammer, we may even consider many strats just so that we can pause buffer our way into position.
Yeah.
It would be very time intensive, but you'd be the first one to kill him, most likely.
A wonderful Lionel juke there.
Well, we did get to see a really nice bomb jump from Kermit. P-Train's going to line up for one as well. Now, if you're doing this method where you release a sword spin, Link actually can't release a sword spin unless he's standing on solid ground, so it forces you onto the closest pixel to the gap. You need to be within 2 pixels to do a bomb jump, or if you dash bonk against the wall next to a bomb, you can be up to 6 pixels away. So a couple different setups, and both of theirs work perfectly.
Pin Gator in Skull Woods all by himself.
And interestingly enough, its routing really actually being very difficult. But we have not really found much of anything in regards to items. There are 2 unique item locations in Skull Woods. Both of these runners not going to forget anything right now.
We did find some bombs, so we know we have at least 1 item location down. P-Train dipping back in to take a death? Interestingly enough, possibly for the health refill.
Yeah, it's very likely. An overworld death is catastrophic in any situation for most runners. It's a very long distance that you have to go to get back to where you were. Whereas just stepping inside a dungeon gives you an easy respawn point. Kermit's getting really good drops for magic so far. He also lights the torch from the right side, which gives him 2 torches in 1 shot. He'll have half his magic meter for this fight.
Oh,
unfortunately, then.
Magic up a bumper cave ledge.
That's probably a sore thing to look at right after doing everything P-Train just did.
Yes, but it'll be Extremely useful.
Well, so Kermit's about to drop down to some disappointment. We already know Argus, of course, is here. Puffy eyeball, just great for inflicting death upon yourself and getting the heck out of there. We will definitely need the hook shot, which we have on Desert Ledge, barring a book or a mirror. We will not be able to get to that anytime soon. That being said, we do have access to Myra area.
Very true. So we've got a Myra Shed. Well, most of Myra at least. No Canis Samaria, so we actually can't get all the way down to the boss.
I don't know if that was
in a C-shaped house.
Was that a C-shaped house or a D-shaped house?
A, B, C, C and D, I would say. Cease and desist with this madness.
Well, a bold statement concerning D-shaped. Never mind. But we're exploring the rest of Village of Outcasts. P-Train only finding 50 roops in the Bombable Hut. Still has to check the chest game, and then we'll probably dive right into Thieves Town immediately after.
Here we see Kermit doing the dance of the fire bars.
That kind of sounds like a classical tune. Like something that you'd, have people do in a ballet to, dance to the fire bar.
Yeah. Good use with the cape there, though, to make it much more easier on himself.
Yeah, definitely a lot less time spent on that room compared to P-Train. Some of our viewers in chat may have noticed that you don't lose magic when you're pulling a statue. This is also true when you're holding a wall. Very handy in the tile room of Ganon's Tower. P-Train unfortunately taken to death here in Thieves Town while exploring the first 4 chests.
Lucky fairy drop for BBB Kermit there.
So the bird that P-Train's killing right now is kind of an interesting scenario in Thieves Town. Thieves Town has 2 layers like most parts of the game do, an upper and a lower layer. If the bird is on the upper layer and you're on the lower layer, you actually cannot take damage from it, and vice versa if you're on the opposite part of the room. So that can sometimes be disorienting in this dungeon.
Some of the enemies in here are much nicer, easier to handle than the normal dungeon enemies for Thieves Town.
Yeah, that's true. Besides the random Hinox that we had there, pretty friendly in this hallway at least. And of course, in Randomizer, you can go straight back to the boss because we do not have to return the Maiden in order to fight the boss. And Vitreous with silver arrows, not bad. P-Train getting pretty close there, taking 1 hit though.
Vitreous very red there. Eye drops, giving us a sword upgrade.
By the way the Vitreous looked, it's almost as if he was smithing that himself, holding his eyes a little too close to the flame, though. Well, that was a very quick jaunt back into the Thieves Town boss room, and P-Train's actually going to leave the basement, perhaps counting dungeon items. I may have missed that. But yeah, not going to go back there anytime soon.
He left at least 2 items, I believe. He definitely got the big key from the first 4 chests, and I believe he got the map as well.
Yeah, because, there's one in the bombable room, there's one in the basement cell, and there's one, of course, in the big chest.
Yeah, check confirming we've got at least 2 other items left in Thieves' Town to pick up at some point. Samaria in the Dig game.
Perhaps it was a wise decision to jump out of Thieves' Town. Kermit may prove that wrong, though. Kermit does have the opportunity to full complete this dungeon as well. P-Train, with the knowledge of the cane, though, may value the Mire area more than he would have otherwise. So we do not have the mirror. We're going to take this frog with us, who is actually a blacksmith, of course, in the light world, on a little bit of what we like to call a world tour. A couple of these checks are not as convenient without the mirror. P-Train may be hoping not to find it altogether. The later that you would find it, the sooner you'd be able to just go mode swamp, for example. Well, next up to the Vitreous fight is not going to be Kermit, because that Hinox hit him both with direct damage and a bomb explosion, unfortunately knocking his entire health bar down in one go. That was absolutely brutal.
Not a very nice dungeon group in the small hallway there. Getting our first medallion of the run and the magic powder, finding Bombos back there in Hype Cave.
Bombos plus powder. Powder is an excellent safety. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to find that many bubbles or any fairies where we want them to be. Ironically enough, Kermit has one on screen, but a lot of places where we expect to have opportunities to heal, not going to pan out today. Well, as we discussed before, there was a bunch of things left in the back of Thieves' Town. Kermit is actually going to go check those for us. Going to pass by a couple Hoku Boku here on his way to check that, and we'll not have to destroy the floor for any particular reason here.
Thank goodness, because that is a rude change on placement.
A very challenging Dark World enemy as well in the room, one that avoids you as you try to attack it. It occurred to me I didn't know what those were. They're called zeros. Or like Zero, Z-I-R-R-O.
Not sure on the pronunciation of that myself.
Sadly for P-Train today, though, I'm going to spend 10 rupees to get 10 extra rupees. 10 for 20 deal for the blacksmiths. Not exactly worth the time.
Bombos for Mire. We can access Mire with that, having just found that in Hype Cave. And the Boots and Mire Shed.
Now that's a find if I've ever seen one. Excellent news for P-Train. That does give us some new locations, and of course makes us much quicker overall. P-Train appears to be heading towards the Bonk Rocks now. Or King's Tomb. So I got an idea here, Spy Poet. I think maybe Kermit was bombing the hole, thinking maybe he can shine some light right into Vitreous's eyes and blind him. Judging by the accuracy of these eyeballs, maybe that strategy was a success.
I wonder if that's why he had such red eyes, too much time staring into the sun.
Certainly not recommended or advised. Wear sunglasses, folks, and never stare directly at a solar eclipse. This has been your PSA. P-Train finding the tempered sword out of that boots location, though. Holy moly. We're definitely escalating our ability to kill things.
We've got either a Aga Tower or escape sequence play here. Not sure what P-Train's going to be doing exactly.
Yeah, with lack of lamp, that's usually not easy to determine between the two. P-Train's going to head towards the rest of the escape. Probably not going to worry too much about the back half of it, unless there is a lamp down here. Although, did Kermit check this earlier?
I think he did, but I unfortunately don't remember what was down here.
Really unfortunate there's so many Hinoxes down here. It would have been very difficult to save Zelda originally. Good thing it's open mode, right?
Very true. If this had been a standard mode setup, I would have forfeited the first 2 minutes. Chat asking why Aga is not in Logic. They do not have lamp for the dark rooms.
And if you feel like you're seeing fire rods out in the field, those are actually fake Master Swords from the original game, planted normally in the Lost Woods to make you search a little bit before you find the pedestal. And that definitely confused me as a kid. But yeah, those are just pick-upable and throwable items, which you actually can do some damage with.
Oh, that's where he found Ether. Alright.
Alright, so both runners have done the basement of Escape. P-Train with those boots, just going to use the Sanctuary as a healing point on that save and quit, and is going to flute, I presume, to Misery Mire area.
Yeah, we don't have any other options left at this point, do we?
Yeah, nothing comes to mind.
There's some out of logic plays they could make, fake flippering for Waterfall Cave and Hobo, but
yeah, right now East Dark World access, we are missing flippers to swim up the river. That's one way we can go up there. Hammer, of course, would get us there, and we do have the lift upgrades that we would need to bypass if we were able to swim across. We don't have a hook shot either to cross to the west side if we wanted to do that at the river. Really not a lot of access to the world right now. Well, P-Train's not holding up for anything, gonna dive right into Misery Mire. There are only 2 items in this dungeon, but if it's a convenient routing for where everything's placed, it's actually not that bad. Doing the basement in the dark, though, wouldn't wish that on many.
no, not at all. This first room in Mire much easier than what it normally is with no BMOs to snipe you.
Yeah, strangely enough, it's a lot harder to do fast just because of, you know, how the Wizrobes and the Popos normally would spawn. But P-Train makes pretty quick work of it, not really losing any health. It's kind of funny to find Garayas everywhere, though. Thankfully, we weren't in a situation where we would need to worry about, say, a red Mimic or a red Garaya.
And there we have Lamp. First of our 2 unique items from Mire. Does make Mire fully, well, up to the boss completable.
Yeah, we have our fire source for the left side. We have boots to get to the big chest. This is a pretty completable dungeon overall. But what that boss is, we don't know. It could very well be Trinex needing a ice rod. Now, Chad is, of course, reminding us that with that lamp, Aghanim is in logic, and that may just be the way we get to the East Dark World. We could find a hammer in Eastern Palace or even Catfish. P-Train doing something I see a lot of runners do in Misery Mire, trying to avoid the cutscene chests, and actually does manage to get the big key, doubling back to the main room. Has the option to go towards the big chest, which is actually exactly what he'll do now. Thankfully, this switch configuration does give us this key door and the ability to check this chest along the way. Typically, it does have a small key, but if you find that item, that means you can pretty much just go straight back to the boss. You don't got to worry about anything else. So this routing, oftentimes, you do it assuming that you're going to find the items, hoping that you can save the time.
Fortunately, just another small key in the big chest, meaning we've got one item potentially in the two fire-locked chests on the left, or the items down on Vitreous.
It doesn't take an immense amount of time to get back to this spot, although Mire 2 room being a little slower with the configuration of enemies, we may see Kermit decide differently. Kermit really putting to use that cape. Barely surviving with a heart and a half right now.
That was beautifully done.
We also did see P-Train take advantage of knowledge of where bubbles are going to spawn underneath certain pots, getting bullied a little bit, having to walk around this chain chomp, but that did give him a very strong heal. Kermit is in a much scarier position and is still going to attempt the much more dangerous left side. And skips an anti-fairy.
Interesting and dangerous play.
I really admire the courage on Kermit trying to save the time in this dungeon, because, that could be catastrophic otherwise. Meanwhile, P-Train making his way very cleanly through the basement of Mire. Only down one heart, having picked one up, actually, on the way through. Let's see what the boss of Misery Mire today will be.
Is this another landmount?
It looks like it. Yes, it is. Unfortunately, a few factors that determine when and where the first set of Lammolas spawn are not as easy to control if you don't know it's already a Lammolas. So P-Train tried to anticipate, hoping to do a sword spin between all three of them. Unfortunately, they didn't spawn the way he expected.
He does very well, though. Does find that second item on the boss. Picks up the green pendant.
Kermit's in a bit of a rough spot here. Does not want to use a potion with a heart and a half, but here in the basement, he's got a chain chomp to contend with in the next room, and going to be shot at in this room. This is getting really close. Regrettably did not see the chain chomp, so Kermit, kind of forced with a gut check moment, decides to save and continue. Will head back towards the back half to take on Lammolas. Thankfully, that's a much easier to deal with foe, and it probably won't be a repeat visit.
Indeed. P-Train going through the maze to go get the old man. Has a much safer route due to the lamp, pardon me.
Well, so we have picked up our lamp. That does have potentially other implications. We mentioned before Aghanim's Tower, and after Misery Mire, what else is there really? We've checked Type Cave, we did all the overworld that we could access. We don't have Mirror either. So, I mean, I guess it is Aghanim's Tower after this, isn't it? Oh, Chad is reminding us that we do have Zora still on the table, and both of our runners have the rupees.
It's true. But, with no flippers, Zora is a really far off one-item location, although we'll get knowledge of the ledge in the process.
Yeah, that's true, and P-Train here is actually going to show us a hint that we didn't see on Kermit's screen, because Kermit was just zipping past that. Doubt P-Train's going to worry about those... Well, he has to actually pick up the 10 arrows, unfortunately, to read that hint.
A compass meets fire in the Tower of Hera.
Yeah, so that's definitely a basement we're going to avoid if we can, knowing that. And actually, Kermit might waste a fair amount of time not checking that hint. That hint probably saved time net if you grabbed it at the right time.
Since he did pick it up, P-Train going to turn on that pendant.
Aww. Grandpa Sahasrashala gave us a sweater for, he knit it for us, personally for Christmas.
Looks like P-Train might be going back to finish the Thieves Town checks, though.
Well, that'll be the green pendant for BBB Kermit. P-Train, we thought was heading towards Thieves Town, will actually be taking care of the purple chest, it looks like, picking it up now. That is a bit of a roundabout way to go, but that is one of 2 item locations we have not checked. One of the nice things about the purple chest is you can take that with the flute, so P-Train not going to have to take all that much time to check. Certainly quicker than hoofing it the whole way. But Kermit's going to make sure that King's Tomb here isn't neglected.
And the purple chest hiding the blue boomerang, the first one we've seen all day.
Naturally, of course, the best of the 2.
Indeed.
Of course, that's a subjective opinion, but even though it's the lower of the 2 upgrades, no lag frames, I prefer it myself. The red one goes farther. Not a whole lot different between the 2 besides that.
And it looks like we will be having that either one play here, P-Train.
Heading up to Aghanim 1, this is a pretty straightforward tower if it weren't Randomizer. It is Randomizer though, so we don't really know what we're going to find up here. One thing to note, in Randomizer, enemies tend to be grouped in certain ways because they do have to function within the rooms that they're placed within. So certain enemies you'll never find in certain rooms, at least under these settings.
Nope, had been a tiny shield on the lumberjack ledge.
So far, so good in the tower. A couple of strange enemies to deal with, but nothing that's, broken. The Hokuboku there, probably not going to pose too much of a threat to P-Train, hopefully. But we'll be able to get through this without too much of an issue. It's nice to have that blue mail. Kermit picking up his will have an easier climb now that he's checked that. So Kermit over here has not finished Eastern Palace as P-Train has. Will be jumping in there P-Train does have a pretty healthy progression lead in that regard.
Delightfully useless there about the lamp.
Hey, not every hint can be perfect, right?
It's true.
P-Train decides to remember his boomerang in the Tower Circle Pots room, really flexing the NMG knowledge. I really salute that. Thank you, P-Train. What is with Hinoxes in really awkward, cramped places?
The Randomizer is a brutal thing.
Well, here comes the Aghanim room. Of course, we still have that cutscene to deal with, and shortly thereafter, we'll be able to check the pyramid, go over to Palace of Darkness, and do Catfish all in one fell swoop. Perhaps one of those things giving us some more of the world to explore. Of course, Aghanim is a pretty standard fight. This is a 5-attack cycle that Aghanim always does. The first attack is always reflectable. This is good old-fashioned Zelda volleyball. 2, 3, and 4 have a 50-50 chance of being reflectable or a blue ball attack, which you cannot reflect. P-Train just saw one there. And the 5th attack is always lightning. Now, the RNG for this is set between the two runners, so they'll experience the same patterns. There is one way you can save time in this fight, though. If you knock Aghanim towards the center of the arena, his warps tend to be a little bit shorter. Oh, and of course, it takes 6 hits to destroy him.
Kermit making really good work of the Eastern Palace rooms, tempered sword, and making it so much quicker.
Only barely missing with the first silver and gets a very early second cycle. Great Lamolus fight saving time on P-Train, who had to do that with Fighter Sword.
Little bit of love on the pyramid ledge. P-Train gonna head out, not bother picking that up, possibly going up to Catfish.
Catfish area certainly appealing. Thankfully, in Randomizer, it is possible to destroy the thieves, which is an interesting setting. P-Train getting some revenge, not bothering to pick up every single bomb, but we will get to see where Catfish is going to lead us to today. Kermit appears to be heading back towards the Dark World through the village portal. I'm not exactly sure where Kermit's heading. Maybe this is the purple chest?
Quite possibly.
Yep, looks to, no.
Blacksmith, I don't think he did blacksmith yet either.
There it is. Well, our Catfish friend only had some spare change for us, so P-Train gonna go back to the Dark World through the Castle Gate, which is a really nice access point. Another thing to note as well, once you've defeated Aghanim 1, the world does change, including certain enemies, so you may end up seeing different things in different places. We'll still have plenty of cash to work with, so nobody's going to have to worry about paying their way to get into Palace of Darkness. Palace of Darkness itself is not going to be locked by any items except for perhaps the hammer, as far as completing most of it goes. We definitely won't be able to do the basement. Also, have to congratulate P-Train on turning around right before getting to the cutscene with Kiki the monkey there, as that actually does bring Kiki closer to the palace, shortening that cutscene. Saves about half a second on that.
Yeah. And the interesting thing with Randomizer is that even though we had a compass in that first room and not a key, there's always the chance that the dungeon would not be roadlocked because we could possibly not have the Goliaths here in the back.
We do get access to another hint tile. P-Train here going to take a look. It is one of the joke tiles, so we're getting no information from that today. Well, P-Train could have picked up a shield that would have blocked some of those Octorok attacks, but we're not probably going to Lumberjack at all. P-Train instead going to make it through the relatively not harmful Hellway, and going to check the 2 items here on the right side. One of these has got to be a key, I think.
And a rare treat on P-Train's side there, seeing the Cannon Guard, which is not actually in the game typically.
Yep, this is Randomizer exclusive. These assets were in the game files. The game just never made use of it. Maybe a slow route to get that death ward, but certainly better than walking back the long way.
Indeed. Chat, wondering what it is we could find for progression here. Flipper's Hammer, or even the Book of Medora to get us into Desert, because we have ledge.
Yeah, that and a mirror would get us there too. Mirror would give us the point from the Mizumire area, so lots of options to get this done, really. Well, a boss heart container not going to quite do it for P-Train. However, there are still other locations to look in Palace of Darkness and other items total. Not a lot of other places to be besides this dungeon, though.
Indeed, and it looks like BBB Kermit is going to make that Aga 1 run too.
Well, this does kind of put P-Train at a pretty hefty advantage over Kermit overall for the race. Aghanim's Tower, of course, is around a 5-minute climb, depending on how you do it. And then, of course, P-Train has already checked Catfish and has made most of Palace of Darkness here. So, I mean, this could be considered basically a dungeon and a half. Kermit's going to have to get some pretty close decisions in plays to catch up here. And with the mirror in P-Train's back half of Palace of Darkness, that's going to be more and more difficult as the sea progresses.
This is the most dangerous spaceman I've ever seen.
Yeah, you'd normally find some of those enemies in even the Ice Palace area. Everything in here wants us dead. P-Train, of course, wasting no item locations, going to make sure everything is checked. And with that big key, we can actually make pretty good progress on the left side over here as well, as the Dark Mace has 2 items and the big chest is now accessible. I do see some mentioning in chat about Pyramid Fairy, but we need the boss from Skull Woods first, which we know is Argus, so we need to get to that hook shot before we can check that. Of course, as chat is discussing now, P-Train does have that mirror, and that does give us our first opportunity at the hook shot. Both of our runners have seen the hook shot, so there's no doubting that that's where we need to go.
P-Train opting to duck out, possibly go get a health refill
I mean, if I was in P-Train's position, I'd go get that hook shot right now.
Either that or saying, screw this, I want a hook shot.
So now that we have the hookshot access, of course, he's going to check Checkerboard Cave, do all this in one big loop, which is a convenient thing to do since Desert Palace is now accessible. And clearing out all of that is just one big chunk of Hyrule taken care of in you know, one easy go. You don't have to double dip the area multiple times. Kermit trying to play catch with the boomerang with Aghanim here for a brief bit, trying to kill some time. Not a very fun thing to wait out. Well, P-Train can fully complete everything in Desert Palace. We do not have to worry about having boots. We have, of course, a fire source and a lift upgrade. No problems getting everything. Did you see that, Hen?
Shovel and Paradox.
If that leads us to another fetch, is that in of itself the paradox? You know, there's some interesting implications with that, though, because we know we needed the hookshot to get there, and we know how we got the hookshot. Quite a chain, you know, that we have to do just to get to there, but maybe that shovel actually leads to something important, and that hint might have more value than it appears to have. Now, we kind of expected Kermit to also visit the Catfish, gonna save and quit and most likely do the same that P-Train did to head over to Palace of Darkness. So this does put them both firmly on the same linear path. Remains to be seen once we have that hook shot if there's any diversions beyond that, as you can do Swamp Palace once you have the flippers. So really only missing a couple of key items here to get all of our dungeon access.
In chat pointing out, we also have access to go finish off Argus in the back of school wards.
And that would give us Pyramid Fairy.
Indeed.
Well, we've seen 2 land moli, or I guess 6 so far. Do you think we're going to find 9 or perhaps 3 sets of them here with Desert?
We very well might.
Well, we'll find out in just a moment. P-Train here just has to use... Oh, that's a convenient anti-fairy, but not going to actually take advantage of that despite not knowing the bosses yet. Oh, apologies to chat. I thought Skull Woods was the other 5.6. We're looking at a slightly lower resolution version of the feed. You're right, Ice Palace is the other 5.6. I like seeing P-Train use bombs, of course, and not freaking out and thinking Helmasaur is incompletable. A lot of people don't know that you can destroy the face mask with 4 bombs. Very useful, and if you're in the Tower of Hera or the Moldorm 2 boss rooms, that's actually a really essential way to do damage when Hammer is really difficult to land hits on. But 1 silver arrow to the Jewel, and P-Train has knocked down Helmasaur.
For a single green rupee.
But it's the memories we made along the way that count, right?
Indeed.
Well, speaking of memories, P-Train's going to leave behind the southwest corner of Hyrule as just a memory, getting the heck out of there, calling upon a bird friend of ours to escort us out of there right quick.
And we seem to have missed it, but it looks like P-Train had picked up Quake at some point in the pod run.
Yeah, so presuming that was in Palace of Darkness, Kermit should be finding that as well. I believe that may have been in the basement then, because I think that's the part that I had missed. P-Train, though, with the hookshot, will go to the east side of Death Mountain, so we'll finally get a look at that. It seems almost inevitable at this point that we're going to find Hammer here. Well, we'll definitely find the shovel, so maybe that's going to be where we find the hammer, the dig spot.
Yeah, with having the both glove upgrades as well, the Death Mountain over here has a veritable smorgasbord of items, so to say.
Certainly the vast majority of what we can access with ease. Of course, there are 7 item locations in Paradox Cave, but then you get another 5 through Hookshot Cave, and then you have the Floating Island, you have Spiral Cave, and then of course we can then head into Turtle Rock, because we have all 3 medallions and the Cane of Samaria.
And unlike most traditional Turtle Rock plays, we might not even need the very missing Ice Rod.
It's in fact pretty likely that we won't need it. Something to keep in mind, folks, Chaos mode for boss randomization does not necessarily give you every boss. We've already seen 2 Lammolas. It's pretty probable, actually, that we won't see Trinex at all. There definitely could still be 4 of them, though. So is 4 Trinex like 12 next? Is that how that works? Like, is that what we call the boss after that?
Trinex with more necks would be a neck of a good time.
We'll take it. All right.
Sorry, that was bad.
No, it's better than any joke I had. P-Train gonna find some butter. A gold sword actually in the Super Bunny Cave. That's 2 item locations checked here on Dark Death Mountain. Going to ascend and go right to the Hookshot Cave. So, as you mentioned, a smorgasbord of items. Still, this platter is dealing out even more items. We'll also be able to check Turtle Rock. The Floating Island before checking Hookshot Cave. P-Train using a warp to save the time of having to even go there in the first place.
Hammer and Hookshot Cave.
Yeah, that didn't take long.
And Red Boomerang. In the Book of Medora, what the world?
Smorgasbord, treasure hoard, I mean, progression path. I mean, there's a lot of different things we can call it, but P-Train has struck gold. So there's a lot of different things that opens up, doesn't it?
Indeed. Unless we find a Trinex Ice Rod technically off the table for required items, Flippers are about the only thing we need at this point.
And of course, P-Train, having picked up that book, will check the Ether Medallion tablet immediately. Still has, of course, Turtle Rock to look into, and certainly no reason not to do it. But Tower of Hair is also here with all of the equipment you could ever hope for. Certainly an overpowered fight against any boss at the top, except, of course, for Trinex.
And thanks to that hint, we do know no need to go down into the basement for Hera today.
Nevertheless, there is a chest right here and a hint. We're finding some cash in Palace of Darkness. You can find that whether it's in a chest or not. P-Train will ascend the tower having that map. We'll be able to rule out one of the 2 chests up there, I believe. Well, might not end up being able to, but either way, one of the 2 chests is going to be a dud as we ascend the tower.
Great.
Wow, I really got that completely upside down. No, there's gonna be 2 items up here. I can't count for squad. We know the compass is in the basement, so we have the compass map and the big key. So naturally, P-Train will check this after having picked up that container. Does have the hook shot, unfortunately, has an enemy in the way. Spy Poet, do you think he planned that to get that floor switch to happen and drop the mini Helmosaur?
I absolutely think he probably did. I watch P-Train a lot. He's actually one of my favorite racers. Was a huge help to me when I started playing Randomizer. Is this called a stair?
It is, and hopefully soon will be was. P-Train, kind of a weird position to have to set this up, but the rarely seen right side fight and absolutely annihilates him with the best sword in the game.
That was beautifully done.
Yeah, thankfully didn't have to worry too much about falling into the endless void that the pit turned into. Graphical, changes being kind of a necessary component of Randomizer. Kermit in yet another low health, close quarter situation here. He has his cape out ready to do whatever he needs to survive, down to a heart and a half. Oh, okay, setting up for a death warp.
Handy.
I gotta say, overall, this has been a pretty generous seed as far as equipment goes. There's only been a couple of major stop gaps, and our runners haven't even checked Zora. They may actually find flippers there, which would be pretty funny. But barring that one item, it looks pretty close to just, go kill everything.
Indeed. Couple of thieves in that tight hallway. What is it with this seed today? Awkward placement for...
Well, those thieves, they're always trying to steal our hearts, but we'll never let them. Of course, only in Randomizer, though. In regular game modes, they just steal everything in your pockets. But, you can change those damage values, or at least the killable status for the thieves. The regular Randomizer mode, when you're not doing it, say, for the tournament settings, is actually pretty robust. You can change so many different things, to the point where you can give certain enemies 50 hearts worth of damage. Oh, wow. BBB Kermit skips out on Helmosaur, not knowing, or at least not attempting, the bomb strats. I'm actually shocked by that.
Rude firebar placement in Turtle Rock. I do feel slightly bad for that mini Moldorm, though, stuck there in the void.
Yeah, not every enemy placement really works, but that Chain Chomp, certainly an effective placement. It might be kind of difficult to get around. You might see P-Train go the long way, or maybe even mirror out after checking the chest behind this room.
Quite possibly.
Well, despite not doing the Helmosaur King fight in Desert Palace, Kermit will be heading up to the mountain, which will bring him closer to where P-Train is. P-Train's still having a pretty sizable lead, though, overall in this relatively linear seed so far. Nothing but berries and bones in that hallway. P-Train's gonna deal with some mini Moldorms far less intimidating than the typical Chain Chomps.
That's the most Chain Chomp room I've seen.
Yeah, it's normally a moment of high tension in any kind of run, but today, not that big of a deal. Well, as Kermit picks up the rest of Paradox Cave and P-Train makes his way through Turtle Rock, we're approaching about an hour and 20 minutes into this race. If you've been enjoying the action as much as I and Spy Poet surely has, and I'm sure most of you have, best way you can support these runners is give them a follow here on Twitch, P-Train, and of course BBB Kermit. And of course, if you want to catch everything that happens in this tournament, your best route is to get flippers for one if you're P-Train, and of course follow the Speed Gaming channels.
I believe outside of possibly needing Ice Rod, we are officially in go mode.
Yeah, so Randomizer, kind of weird when we don't know if Trinex is out there, but as far as dungeon items go, or dungeon progression goes, we are definitely in go mode.
Possibly still going to see item checks just for that Ice Rod because they have no idea if they're going to need it or not.
Now, that is something that may differ between runners. It's entirely possible that one of these two may gamble on not needing it whatsoever and try to go mode everything. This is the third game between the two, and the stakes are always highest when neither of you have control over these settings beyond the simple vetoes. Of course, we do see certain things do have to be changed to make certain enemies killable in certain positions. You see the P-Train in the Mimic Cave there. There's a slight change to make that room completable under any enemy circumstances.
Chad making a couple of suggestions about finding the only Trinex in the seed at Mini Moldorm 2.
Yeah, Moldorm 2 would be a very aggressive location for a Trinex in the first place, and probably the most annoying as far as needing to find that Ice Rod. I almost feel like it would be better karma if it was in one of the chests just before that room, but like, oh gosh, I can't even think of which one would be the worst. If it was behind the Ice Armos room and nobody bothered to check it until like they're forced to. Oh, we're being corrected in chat by one of the moderators in the channel. Thank you. That it cannot be at Moldorm 2 because of the size of the arena, but at Lamolus 2 it's possible. So even then, could be a rude awakening. Well, P-Train nearing the end of Turtle Rock, Kermit just entering. That gap is actually not as far apart as I was expecting them to be entering and exiting.
P-Train getting trolled by the anti-fairy.
Sometimes it's just, a fairly difficult time. I'm sorry, a fairly difficult time. Really struggling with my words today. One thing for people who do have some, maybe nerds are just getting a P-Train here trying to do the laser bridge skips, but if you're trying to get better at these laser bridge skips, keep in mind that only the very front part of the laser actually has hit detection or collision. So if you can actually be passing through the back half of that laser completely safely. Wow, this bomb throwing guard really slowing us down here.
Ooh, that was some major lag.
Well, as P-Train approaches the boss room, I'm a little concerned for Kermit here, who has been running a little low on health all throughout this race. Not really taking too many deaths outside of the intended ones, but nevertheless. And we get another cold stare here.
Not quite as smooth as the Hera Cold Stare, but still done excellently. But look, we definitely don't have to go to Lumberjack. Tiny shield.
Oh, but come on now. Now we can get the fire shield, and that's totally useless in, well, I guess Lamola's too. I mean, that's about the only room I can think of where I'd really want it. Kermit taking another laser. This is getting really close. The next one, he's got blue mail, so he should be able to survive the next one, but at least getting the flippers, that's the critical thing that happened here.
P-Train going down to check out the Spike Cave.
Now, we know this might not be necessary if we don't find any Trinex. P-Train trying to ensure that he's not going to have to worry about that at all, I guess.
Making excellent use of the hook shot there to bypass as much of the spike damage as he can to waste as little magic as possible for cape usage.
Yeah, it may have been close enough to just pick it up, but it was just close enough where you don't really want to risk it. That's a lot of time loss, and you also have to respawn, get to where you want to go. Save and quit, certainly quicker.
P-Train going to head back into Palace of Darkness to finish it off here.
Of course, we have not seen the boss room for Palace of Darkness yet, having not had the hammer prior to being here the first time around. Kermit has some different options to take if you'd like. Swamp Palace is now accessible, as is Ice Palace.
Indeed, Kermit taking what looked like a intended death there for the health refill.
Now, as it turns out, this is Palace of Darkness is one of the dungeons that will still require that bow. You still have to shoot that statue. So that is a hard-coded requirement. No way getting around that. Unfortunately, if it weren't for stuff like that, there would be the potential for bowless all dungeon seeds. Not going to happen in this situation, though.
Might be a possibility for future dev work. They already gave us the Skullwoods opened up.
I think it may be a little more complicated with doing a cutscene trigger, but I don't know how to do all that disassembly stuff. Maybe there's some technically minded folks out there who code for a living who might be able to correct us on that. But certainly something that I think is in the wheelhouse of the developers. Developers for Link to the Past Randomizer, they give their time. They don't, accept money for it. Those guys are absolutely fantastic, and we have a lot to watch thanks to them. So if you ever see one of those devs in one of the servers, give them a high five or something, virtually speaking.
Indeed.
Well, the best of Zelda 3 Randomizer about to produce for P-Train today, yet another Cold Stare.
P-Train must be glad to have found that half magic pickup at this point.
Yeah, about as clutch as it's going to get. I got to wonder if maybe these two did something or maybe angered the seed algorithm, because just get nothing but cold stares.
Ugh.
I guess that's better than having to deal with Trinex and his cold shoulder.
We've seen an Argus, we've seen 3 Cold Stairs, a King Helmassar.
Yeah, none of our runners, or neither of our runners, excuse me, have dealt with that Argus yet. That is still on the table. I think P-Train might be heading that direction right now.
The Dark Maze and Turtle Rock being much nicer than it normally is.
Yeah, kind of nice not to have to deal with as many fire bars. There actually is still one, and that skull went to go get Kermit. Kermit's got to be careful here. He's going to use the invulnerability frames that you have during the hook shots animation to avoid almost certain death, actually, here in the maze. I mean, while it may have been friendlier, Kermit just seems to be a magnet for damage today. You know, in spite of that, though, Kermit not doing that bad to avoid unnecessary deaths overall. Wow, the jukes!
That was beautifully done him on Kermit's side.
I love how much easier, though, for, like, say, looking at P-Train's screen, how much easier this whole segment is with all the equipment that we didn't have earlier. Alright, well, that's Cold Stair number 3 for Kermit. Opting to use the Bombos medallion to save even a little bit more magic, which is definitely a wise decision. Gonna have that fire rod handy for backup if need be. Actually in pretty dangerous waters here, so that fire rod probably a good choice.
Ooh. Getting a clutch out.
And at the same time, P-Train taking care of this moving Argus fight. This is actually extremely challenging to line up everything, but thanks to the way the moving floor works, that last silver arrow is not as bad to deal with. We're going to offer gold sword strats, though, instead, since that is still an overpowered weapon. I certainly think that fight would have been a lot more hectic and stressful if we had tried to do that much earlier. Somehow had the hook shot when we first came through here.
It absolutely would have been.
When we were last here with, what, fighter sword? We didn't have the hammer. We didn't have the bow even. Not that you can use the bow against it, but...
Looks like we're going to get a Ice Palace run. Not a single person has checked any of the Hobo or Zora area items this seed so far.
Yeah, being so close to guaranteed go mode at this point, and we've just found out the Cave of Burna is the Cane of Burna is in the Graveyard Ledge, so we're probably not going to bother with that. But being so close to what we can imagine is a perfect go mode, there's probably not a lot of incentive to go to these one-off locations. Not until you at least find a Trinex.
Indeed, at this point, might just be hoping that with the Cold Stair trend, it's...
I mean, what, are we going to go 4 for 4 with Ice Palace being vanilla?
Always a possibility. Never know with these enemy randomizers.
Fair enough, fair enough. And being that there's only 2 dungeons left to complete, the likelihood of Trinex is actually kind of small. And how fast it is to get to the boss here in Ice Palace. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, even Swamp Palace is convenient to get to the boss. We can find out this information without really worrying about the double dip costing much.
P-Train not having an easy time in the button room.
The same goes for Kermit, having a little bit of difficulty with red guards here in Skull Woods. Thankfully knows exactly what he needs to do. Gonna have a pretty straightforward fight here. Well, besides dealing with 1 or 2 attack cycles here, this fight's looking pretty good for Kermit, and we see a hover from P-Train to get around the crystal switch pegs. For those of you out there who have never seen hovering, if you haven't yet, you definitely missed something interesting there. Hovering is taking advantage of the movement system that Link has. When you're dashing, there's a small window where the game does not check to see if Link is actually standing on anything. And if you mash in a certain specific pattern fast enough, you can actually perpetually hover over the gap in the floor. So you can use that across certain gaps. It's extremely difficult to do.
Fire Bar Room and Ice Palace taken over by Crystal Roller.
Alright, well, moment of truth, folks. You've been waiting for 3 other cold stares. Is it time for the 4th?
No, we have our first Mothula. And compared to his normal room, this Mothula fight is...
That doesn't totally feel like a paradox. Mothula normally very sensitive to that fire rod. Today, just gonna go down to some Gold Sword, which, interestingly enough, in the vanilla game would not have worked. This is actually a programmed fix in A Link to the Past Randomizer. You could still attack him with pokes, vanilla, but that's because of damage class stuff, and it's kind of wonky. And Kermit's retreading ground that P-Train's already been on, though. He bailed out of Desert Palace earlier, not remembering that you can use bombs to destroy the shell. Could have destroyed this boss with the previous equip. Nevertheless, though, with what he has now, making very quick work of it. Certainly less time spent on the fight itself compared to P-Train.
P-Train looking to head into his final dungeon here. Probably going to gum out it as well.
Yeah, I mean, you got a 1 in decent chance of not dealing with, or not having to worry about Trinex. Trinex being kind of unlikely at this point. Of course, there is still Ganon's Tower, and the boss fight's in there, so... And it could potentially be a big key behind an Ice Armos room Trinex, I believe. If that's possible, that would actually... I mean, I'm a little bit less experienced with that configuration for Randomizer, but if that is possible, that'd be like the worst case scenario. I kind of like that P-Train's checking this hint, even though it's just going to tell us about the blue mail at Sahazrala. Who knows? Maybe it is an Ice Palace hint, or an Ice Rod hint, and that's useful information potentially.
Interestingly enough, it looks like we've got Kermit heading straight into Swamp Palace as well.
I kind of expected this play sooner if anybody was going to check stuff. I mean, 6 total items, you can get to the boss pretty easily, and you might have a reason to come back in and do the routing different. You know, I mean, it's not as painful to go into twice if you know your opponent is likely to do the same thing.
Very sure.
Now, ordinarily, Swamp Palace would be kind of your middle-of-the-road dungeon as far as the entire game is concerned in terms of difficulty. This can be potentially very different in Randomizer. There are a lot of enemies on screen in many different rooms. might not necessarily be friendly.
Nice anti-fairy there. Phoebe Kermit probably not going to pick that up though. It's not a...
Yeah, we're not doing that bad on health overall, even with half of our health down. I mean, P-Train has 18 hearts to work with, 15 to work with for Kermit. This is a pretty comfy position to be in. Now, of course, chat reminding us that P-Train is still checking chests, presumably only the ones that are directly in the path. And that does make sense. I mean, if there's a chance you can pick up, extra hearts, you get a Sanctuary Heart for a full health refill, or any number of things, maybe that fourth bottle and it's a potion, that stuff can still be helpful.
Indeed.
And of course, maybe you'll find that Ice Rod. P-Train actually checking more chests than Kermit. Kermit going right back to the boss. That would actually be, a little bit of time to gain back on him. But right now, I would say that it's probably P-Train's race to lose if we don't have any Trinexes.
Kermit possibly just trying to figure out what boss is back there and if it's defeatable or not. We have our third landmo, fourth landmo?
I think that's 3. So 3 Cold Stare, 3 Lamolus, 1 Mothula.
1 King Helmasaur.
Yes, folks, the often described, never seen DLC fight, Lamolus 3. Surprise bout of sync between the two runners. Just about a 1.5 seconds difference between their final kill there.
P-Train is going to start making his way up to...
By the looks of things, emptying his bottles to buy potions.
Very fair. With the Randomizer, never sure what we're going to run into up in Ganon's tower.
Alrighty, well, I think now that P-Train's on his way up to the top of the mountain for Ganon's Tower, I think it's about time we honor a time-honored tradition here on the Speed Gaming family of channels. You're going to see an exclamation start on your screen, and you should throw in some numbers to make a guess as to which of the 22 item locations in Ganon's Tower we're going to find that big key today. So get your guesses in. Spy Poet, do you have a guess of choice?
My guess of choice is always 7. Either means going full right and it's on the torch, or somewhere on the left-hand side.
And of course, this is all just for fun, and we do, of course, have this leaderboard we'd like to maintain. If you're a Twitch subscriber or a donator of 250 bits or more to any Speed Gaming channel, you can be entered into that leaderboard. All for fun, though. Feel free to throw in numbers if you haven't done either of those things. And we'll cut this off in just a moment when on the restream, Link is entering the tower. I'm hoping to find it at chest number 14, though. Bob's chest, traditionally speaking.
Some weird,
Some minor graphical glitches there.
Indeed.
Well, so that's 2 item locations down in Ganon's Tower. We do have 4 more items that we can find over here on the right side, and if we progress all the way, we can head over to Ice Armos and grab 4 more. P-Train may opt to do that, depending on whether or not they want to find out what's actually at that boss fight. That could be useful information if we can't find what we need. Regarding the question in chat about where we can find Ice Rod, literally anywhere that is not blocked behind a boss room with Trinex in it.
And just a big 20 on the torch, which would have been number 7.
In the meantime, Kermit has the relatively safe and easy Ice Moth fight with quite a bit of health to work with. Does not have to worry too much about dying here as long as we get a couple good sword slashes in. So that's Ice Palace down. Still has to do Tower of Hera and Palace of Darkness. Thankfully, Tower of Hera can be completed at the same time or in the same trip as Ganon's Tower, which is pretty convenient.
We are finding the bug net on P-Train's side.
Enemies in the room giving him a bit of a hard time trying to kill them all to open up that door again. Taking a bit of time to do so, but 11 items in, still no big key. We're going to need that, at least one small key to climb the tower safely, of which we have many.
Double firebar room, simply the nicest room in the dungeon.
Yeah, so to echo, murmurs in chat about what would be Kermit's best hope here, Kermit's best hope would be finding Ice Rod somewhere P-Train did not check, and, Ice Armos blocking the big key here, but actually being Trinex, or Lamulus 2 being Trinex. Those are the best hopes. Because even in a best case scenario here, P-Train is at least an entire GT climb ahead of Kermit, barring that. That would be quite the unfortunate scenario, though, to have Ice Trinex.
Red shield. Oh, and in chest 15, we have the big key.
Well then, I guess I actually ended up being the closest.
Good job.
Congratulations me, I win an all-expenses-paid trip to the top of Ganon's Tower, potentially blocked due to scheduled blackouts with the Ice Rod availability, but that remains to be seen. That's like my first win all year. Hey, we'll take it, though.
Indeed.
P-Train walking through one of my favorite rooms in the entire game, Ganon Ball Z, as we like to call it. Gonna make his way into the gauntlet.
Ganon Ball Z, I'm sorry.
Well, there's a big discussion about that being called Ganon Ball GT instead, but it was determined that wasn't canon. They were just, orb shooters, I guess.
P-Train making good use of bombos, just not wanting to deal with any of these rooms.
With half magic, seems like a really smart decision. This cold stare fight, not terribly difficult. Kermit just getting kind of some weird positions, but thankfully actually puts two of them in the corner. Makes for some really easy splash damage and wraps up that fight with only 4 hearts down. You weren't kidding when you were saying that P-Train is issuing a train of bombos. And it is going to be Vitreous on Lamola's too.
With some yellow eyes this time. Looks like this is the one that decided to wear sunglasses.
You know, jaundice, not a good thing for you. P-Train going to prescribe him some silver eye drops, making sure that case of that goes away quickly. Can't have any kind of food service with that kind of condition.
P-Train just really done with the seat at this point.
I mean, I can't fault him for doing it. He does have the potions he needs in order to replenish for the tower, or for the torches. And I guess probably not going to use it here, but... I mean, at this point, you've done it for almost every room. Why not?
Good point.
A very interesting version of the torch room. So at this point, the best hope for Kermit will be P-Train accidentally despawning the tower if he were to climb up the stairs at the wrong moment in this room. I believe that moment just passed. Or dying in the tower, which is actually definitely still possible. One would hope, though, at this point, P-Train would try to avoid that with using powder in this next room, if possible. Or there might not be an anti-fairy. I forgot about that, but at least taking advantage of that or a potion. Oh, no!
Seconds from picking up a fairy, unfortunately taking a really nasty death.
Well, the deck is still stacked against Kermit, even in spite of this death and the reclimb of the tower that P-Train now has to do. Kermit still has to find that big key, and that is definitely on the left side after a long path. So most runners these days have been taking right side first. Even then, Kermit would have a lot of ground to cover. Cold Stare, not a cozy fight at the top of Tower of Hera, but Kermit's going to have to climb to the summit of yet another tower just to have hopes of staying in this race. Hefty advantage for P-Train, but certainly not insurmountable like this tower was his first time around. Seeing some discussion in chat about how you'd feel after a death like that, you know, mentions of being tilted potentially. I mean, it would not be unreasonable to feel that way. That's a very difficult death to take. NMG runners definitely know how that feels. You're getting to the end of an awesome run, great splits, and then the worst happens. Most people think it's going to be Ganon. Unfortunately, sometimes the tower itself can be pretty painful.
P-Train getting a nice fairy drop there.
Now, I also find it interesting that P-Train is continuously using this bombos. If there are rooms that Kermit can knock out a little bit faster than this, does have a little bit of time save here in the tower. I mean, while the Bombos definitely is a reliable way to get the kills, if you can land this with, say, Fire Rod or your sword, good movement, I mean, we do have boots. It's not like we're doing this bootless.
Lucky full magic drop there too for P-Train to continue doing these Bombo strats, at least.
Oh, and I believe Kermit went left first.
That's gonna save him some time since we know the key is not on the right side.
P-Train has to be careful here. These Vitreous Eyeballs do a lot of damage, getting really close, and will not actually escape the one cycle or the first cycle, so we'll take some lightning damage on the way up. It's a really good thing P-Train decided to get that green pendant, because this would be a much scarier climb after that fight. Thankfully, we do still have a couple of opportunities to heal. Hopefully, P-Train won't end up forgetting to use that potion quickly.
Oh, Kermit went back and is going to the right now.
Yeah, we've seen runners in the past do this. Some people described it as like the Dark Magician strat, going left and then right once you get through those 4 enemies, or 4 chests in the Stalfos room. This will lose Kermit a significant chunk of time having to go to the Randomizer room on another pass to the left side.
P-Train, thankfully, having moved through this, knows what was waiting for him in the torch room.
For half a second there, I thought he despawned the tower, but I just forgot that the fire bars aren't there.
That would be, pretty bad.
That would be the one thing that would put Kermit back in this. I mean, Ganon Falls are possible, but it's not going to be this big of a difference at this point.
P-Train making it through that room pretty well. We find another cold stare.
Alright, so 4 cold stairs, 3 Lamoli, and 2 Vitreous. 1 Helmasaur. We're really following a chain here. And I guess 1 Icy Moth.
It's like the start to a 12 Days of Christmas parody.
Pretty much. Unfortunately, Festive Randomizer was not that Christmas style this time around. It was Halloween, which is definitely worth playing if you made me generated any seeds. I highly recommend taking the time to play through that. Christmas Festive Randomizer is something that comes around every year thanks to our awesome devs. Definitely keep an eye out for it. I really love the Charlie Brown theme in the last one.
And we're back at Aghanim 2 this time around. 1 real one, 2 fake ones.
Yeah, those fake ones always shoot a reflectable shot. There's still the 50-50 chance on the regular one. Once this gets desynced, this is actually a pretty difficult fight to coordinate. Alright, with that, P-Train has finished off the Aghanim 2 fight right as Kermit begins to ascend the tower. As we talked about before, pretty much exactly 1 Ganon's Tower climb difference between the 2 of them. Could have been mitigated severely if Kermit had chosen to go left the entire way through. Here it is, though, P-Train, having defeated every single boss of the game. All iterations of them will finally take down the Big Pig. In this fight, we have all the equipment we could ever hope for. So 6 slashes for the first 2 phases, respectively, 4 for phase 3, and now that we've done all of the bosses in Aghanim 1 and 2, we can do 4 silver arrows to finish off phase 4.
Getting that nice bottom corner.
As we had with Aghanim fights, the RNG will be set for how many Ganon warps we'll see from this, unless one of our runners falls or dies.
In which case, then it's completely up in the air. Positively could go any which way.
Yet another thing that energy runners hate is how many Ganon warps you just cannot predict. You could still be a minute and a half ahead and just get ruined right at the end. Trying to go for a double, we're not going to worry about getting the torch glitch, which happens if you light the left torch before the right one goes out. Narrowly holding on off the ledge.
Gets a double. Just misses the triple, but then gets the triple.
Alright, well with that, P-Train will finish up the Ganon fight. And we'll walk into the Triforce room with an official SRL time of 2 hours and 30 seconds in first place.
Kermit also using some bomba shots.
Alright, well it looks like P-Train's actually waiting for us in the waiting room to conduct an interview, so I'm going to go ahead and pull him in. And we are joined by the victor of the race today, P-Train. Congratulations, GG.
Thanks, GG.
I gotta ask, you know, are you feeling kind of cold about this seed? You know, do you feel like you've just been staring at it and it's just been the same boss 4 times over?
I will consider that a fair exchange for not seeing Trinex.
One thing we noticed that was different between you and Kermit while going throughout certain dungeons towards the latter half of the race is that you were checking a lot more chests, so it sounds to me, based on what you're saying now, that Trinex was definitely lingering in your mind.
Yeah, I tried to check things that were on my way. I didn't go too far out of my way, but yeah, I guess Swamp Palace, if Trinex was there, if Pod was there, if Pod had Trinex, and then my biggest worry was Trinex replacing Land Mode 2. Luckily that didn't happen. If Trinex was at Moldworm 2, I just would have hovered the gap.
We ended up finding out, or getting confirmed from chat earlier on, that there's actually not enough space on the Moldworm 2 platform to have Trinex.
Sweet. I thought I had remembered saying that, which was part of the reason why I didn't search too hard for Ice Ride. Like, I thought about before doing Skull Woods, going and checking Hammerpeg Cave, before doing Swamp, checking Cave 45, but I was just like, no. Also, I felt really behind the seed. I spent a lot of time in Skull Woods early game. Why, I do not know. It felt like a good idea at the time, but the moment I dropped down and saw Argus, I was just like, why am I even here? And then also finding boots where they were. I think I had access to boots a while before I actually found them, so I was like, well, that's probably the game right there, honestly.
BBB Kermit actually had a couple of unfortunate deaths. You were actually got into the lead pretty early and stayed that way. The biggest chance he had was when you had your unfortunate death in the pre-Cold Stare 2 room, or Cold Stare 4 room, I should say.
What? I died in the gauntlet?
Or no, you
I don't remember that. That didn't happen.
I mean, at least you didn't despawn the tower.
Yeah, that was super embarrassing. I had 3 potions, but I just powdered the fairy, so it was there. And I was like, oh, let me just walk over here. But then the skull kept like pinning me up against the wall, and then I died. And I was like, well, that's probably the game. Also.
So, all in all, this puts you at 2-2 in your group so far. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
And I believe this was the match that you set for the settings against your opponent Kermit today.
Yes.
Okay, so then for those of you out there who want to follow the rest of the series, or at least between these 2 racers, as every racer will race each of their group opponents 3 times. The second game between P-Train and Kermit will be under Kermit's picks of settings. The third game, of course, being randomized with a veto for each of these runners. So, P-Train, while we have you, is there anything you've been practicing for in particular outside of Randomizer? You know, I mean, are you keeping anything in your back pocket that you're not going to tell anybody about? You know, try and use it as a weapon later on?
I mean, as far as like picking settings, no. I do have a race coming up tomorrow against ACMLM. That'll be inverted, so I've been practicing like low percent blind. But really, I should have been doing that this whole time anyway. So I've just been lazy and haven't been practicing inverted. So that'll be a fun time tomorrow. But yeah, honestly, I just got a console lately, so I'm still trying to get used to the timing of that. Also, the D-pad on my actual Nintendo controller is much different than the iBuffalo. So, like, especially like watching the restream, like watching me try to pick up pots is kind of hilarious because it's hard for me to do lineups that I'm used to doing. Number one, because the input lag is gone. Number two, just because the D-pad handles differently. So a lot of my practice lately has just been trying to get used to playing on a console.
Having seen the difference between the two, it is definitely a big difference in input lag, particularly if you can give yourself access to something like a CRT or an upscaler that works really well like that, you know, low refresh. As we're speaking now, though, Kermit's actually in the Ganon fight. So, I mean, the difference between you guys as far as total time, not that significant. You know, how do you feel like you're performing so far in your group? I mean, being 2-2, I know you guys haven't raced that many of your races, but that's not a bad position to be in for how many races have gone in on your group.
Yeah, I don't think my group is one of the hardest groups. I think that they're, I don't know, like, but I don't think my group's the hardest group, but at the same time, everybody in the group I've raced against before this tournament, and they have beat me substantially. Like, not just like, oh, that was a close one. Like, they have whooped me in dailies, weeklies, you know, whatever it is. So I kind of enter every race just trying to do my best, you know, but also kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, you know what? If I lose this race, that's okay. I have a lot of respect for all the runners in my group, and they've been racing very well. So I just hope I'm able to keep up with them at the end of the group stage.
Certainly kind words and great words to be speaking. And as you were, Kermit just finished with a triple to knock out the Ganon fight. With that, Kermit here will finish with an official SRL time in second place of 2 hours, 6 minutes, and 57 seconds. Just a 6.5 minute difference between the two of you, which is astounding considering how much we were looking around the world for certain things. We'll see if we can get Kermit in here for an interview as well. P-Train, though, as far as the rest of your schedule, while we're trying to raise Kermit up here in the channel, do you have any matches scheduled coming up?
Yeah, tomorrow I have a race against ACMLM. And it'll be inverted all dungeons. I think it's inverted all dungeons. It may just be inverted.
And as we mentioned before, not a whole lot of your group has scheduled matches yet compared to a few other groups. Group Ice Rod is where both P-Train here and BBB Kermit both belong to. Given that there are a lot of matches to go, do you guys plan on trying to, or at least as you've talked to amongst each other, do you guys plan on spreading that out a bit? I mean, I know you have the one match tomorrow, so you're definitely getting a few out of the way.
Yeah, for me, I've had a lot of like personal stuff going on that's just occupied my evenings lately, and I work an 8-to-5 job, so I can't really do much during the day. I do have the week of Thanksgiving off though, so I'm hoping to get a lot of races done then, assuming that everybody else's schedule lines up. So I do have some time to. I have more time later than I have now to schedule races.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that big Thanksgiving stretch for at least a lot of the people in the States who might have some vacation time alongside that, and of course other countries that celebrate holidays around the same time. And of course this group stage is scheduled to go all the way into the new year and finish up right around then. So we're definitely looking forward to a lot more matches from you and Kermit, of course, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Kermit, I see you in chat. GG. I really enjoyed it.
And just to confirm, since I went ahead and looked it up, you are doing all dungeons again tomorrow as well. Train.
Oh, awesome. I probably should know that, like, before I start the race. A professional racer probably would have looked at that. Oh, one thing I thought was really trolly, I don't know if y'all mentioned it or not, but I was particularly watching Kermit's screen to see if he got caught by this. There was a freaking Wallmaster in the room right before Cold Stare and Ice Palace, or I guess in this race, Macula. That was like the dirtiest thing. That's the worst place to put a Wallmaster in, because you got to grab the statue, you're moving slow, and I hate that.
I did not catch that. That is dirty.
Yeah, it's always fun when you have certain things shuffled in places where you just literally cannot do anything but just dodge. So, as of course we do see Kermit and Chad talking to us about the race. P-Train, you do have the floor. Anything you'd like to say to your fans out there?
Fans, you're too kind there.
Hey.
No, GG to Kermit. I really enjoyed racing against you, man. Hopefully next race goes better for you. Not because you lost, but because you're tilted. I really appreciate the commentators. I really appreciate y'all commentating. I appreciate Speed Gaming for the restream. Special thanks to Dimensive for tracking, because being a commentator myself, you play a huge role. So I always like to give a special shout out to trackers. Really enjoyed it. I love Randomizer. I think all dungeons pairs very well with Randomizer just because of the ball shuffle. So I enjoyed the seed. I enjoyed racing Kermit. I'm looking forward to our second race. Thanks, everybody.
Well, it's definitely a pleasure to watch this race. And of course, the best way for all of you folks out there watching to support these runners is give them a follow here on Twitch. P-Train, of course, and BBB Kermit. We'll post those links in the chat, or they may already be there. And of course, if you want to follow all of this tournament, you do so following Speed Gaming and Speed Gaming 2 through 6, and of course ALTTP Randomizer and ALTTP Randomizer 2 through 4. Just as a little bit of business as we're waiting for this credit sequence to finish up on the restream, we do have more matches on the schedule. Today we just finished up a 131, or we're finishing up a 131 right now. There is actually 3 different restreams at 3:30 coming up. One on Speed Gaming 5, Bwayne versus Killer App. On ALTTP Randomizer, Gem versus Hitsuyan Elite, or 1337. And of course, on Speed Gaming 3, Willard J. Bradley versus Ninban. We have a Swordless Seed, we have an Uncle Assured or 2. There's a lot of Randomizer just in this next hour. Later on, you'll see matches at 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, and 12:30 a.m., all Eastern Time, of course. So stay tuned. Buckle in, get your pizza. I recommend, personally, because I used to be a pizza maker. I've said enough today, though. Thank you for sharing the cast with me, Spy Poet. Feel free to close us out.
Always glad to cast these wonderful races. Always a great time to just be able to hang around with our racers, runners, trackers, because we all know that the trackers do 90% of the hard work when you're not racing. So special thanks to Dimensive for all the hard work they did, especially with the several corrections for us when we kept getting Ice Palace and Schoolwoods mixed up. But as always, we look forward to seeing you guys around for the rest of the races. We have 720 races, I believe, for this class of 6 weeks. So
that's a staggering number to imagine.
Thank God they're not all getting restreamed. We would be talking about Randomizer all day, every day.
Which, ain't that bad of a thing. But I'm starting to wonder who gets saved more as far as princesses go, Zelda or Peach. I'm really starting to think there's some doubt.
At least until we start seeing Mario randomizers.
But they exist. That's what's so nuts about it.
Very true.
And of course, if you would like to get involved in this community, if you want to, learn more about Zelda 3, also known as Link to the Past, whether it's the vanilla game, the randomizer, just the fun stuff that we do here on Speed Gaming even. There's lots of Discords that you can check out. Of course, the Speed Gaming home Discord for this and other tournaments. the Link to the Past Randomizer Discord for all versions and modes of the randomizer. You can also find it at ALTTPR.com if you'd like to get involved in playing the different versions of the randomizer. And there is, of course, an SRL server on Discord as well for A Link to the Past Vanilla if you want to get into the vanilla speedrun, which I highly encourage if you want to get really good at the game. Maybe if I did it more often, I'd be good at the game. Lots of different ways to get involved. We'd love to see all of your bright faces in one of the next tournaments. And the only way to do so is to get better at the game. Got to qualify. So we're looking forward to that. There's even a practice tool that you can use to practice individual sections of the game made by poor little Pinkus. So no reason not to use the resources. We want to see you next time. Any other final thoughts either of you'd like to share with us today?
I'm all good.
Yeah, I'm good. Just appreciate the restream commentary and track.
Alrighty, folks. I think we've said it all. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned on all three of those channels coming up for the 3:30 and 45 minutes from now restreams. I've been Udaimonistic, joined today by Spy Poet. We will see you again next time.
Have a good evening.